morning. It's my pleasure to be here. Travel is an interesting subject, and it's kind of basically surrounds my life. As you heard, my job, I went to work for Boeing, and Boeing really is all about travel, right? I mean, if people don't travel, Boeing doesn't exist. And what Boeing creates day in and day out is what allows people to travel and really fundamentally connects the world in ways that is truly amazing, and allows things to happen that really drive the world in many ways. So it's been interspersed with travel in and out my whole life in my professional career. But I think, when you think about travel, and Wendy said that earlier, it's curiosity is a key part of it. And I think it kind of takes maybe three different forms. I mean, clearly there's the human curiosity that's just, there are people like you, like us, in other parts of the world, and what are they like, right? And how, do they have the same needs? Do they operate the same way? Do they laugh at the same jokes? I mean, there's a lot of that just human connection that kind of, I think, is a key part of travel. I think there's an intellectual curiosity. I mean, there's just this vast world that's out there that operates, and globalization is a key thing, and it's changing quite rapidly. But how are other people dealing? How are other cultures dealing with some of these things? And some of the things that we have here in our community, find the same thing in other communities, just in different ways, and they manifest themselves differently. And then, obviously, for myself, I have a professional curiosity because I really need to find solutions to the supply chain, and those exist not just here in the United States or in North America or in the state of Washington. They exist all around the world, and so I have to go find the best talent, the best capability, the best cost and value in order to deliver our products to our customers. So that curiosity is kind of the underpinning, I think, of what drives travel. And then clearly there's the adventure portion of it. I mean, that's how I got my first taste of travel. I remember my buddy and I decided that we would take off on a trip for about 3 months and go hitchhiking through New Zealand, Australia, and go through Southeast Asia, and not having any clue really what any other culture was like, because I'd grown up in Spokane, gone to school at Washington State, and had traveled maybe as far as northern Idaho and southern Oregon. And so I was just amazed that what I found was just such an eye-opener that I hadn't expected. I can remember my very first day in Auckland, and it was about noon, but I was thirsty, so I was trying to find a place to have a pint. And I see there's across the street there's a bar that says private bar, and there's a bar that says public bar. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? Well, I sure as hell can't get into the private bar, so I go across to the public bar. And I walk in, and it was a very unnerving experience, because it was a bar full of Maoris, which is the national people in New Zealand. And everybody stopped and stared at me, and I went up to the bar and I said, could I get a beer, please? And the guy goes, "You're in the wrong place." And I go, "You're not welcome here." And I thought, wow, this is interesting. And this is in downtown Auckland, right? And he says, "You need to go across the street to the private bar." And I go, "Well, how do I get into the private bar?" And he goes, "Don't worry, you just walk in, you'll be fine." And the private bar walked in, it was for basically white people. And this is 1985. And I thought New Zealand was a fairly advanced country, and they were, right? I mean, but it was shocking to me to learn that some of the things that were in our country's history were in history. And so you started to get this human issue of just the realities of culture and people and differences and biases and all these things. Well, so I mean, it was such stunning to me. And then as I went through this trip, one of the hardest things was to get to my destination, because people wanted me to stay overnight. They'd pick me up, and it wasn't just young people that picked me up. I got picked up by, all kinds of people, and I got picked up by Maoris. Man, I remember going to this guy's house and spending all afternoon with him, playing cribbage and having fixed dinner. So, I mean, it was just such a cool experience, and it set the stage for me that I always wanted to do more travel as I got older. And but then you go off, you have kids, and you get busy with your career and so forth. But I was lucky. Because my job takes me all around the world. I have suppliers in 38 countries around the world. So I spend a lot of time doing international travel. In fact, I actually operate a business in Russia for the Boeing company, and that has been truly an amazing opportunity. And again, I think I've never had a trip that I've taken, whether it be a long trip or a short trip, that hasn't changed me in some way, shape, or form. That hasn't allowed me to get, I would like to think, maybe more wiser and a better human being. But every trip has offered up something that's just been very insightful. It's been an experience, even some ways in the simplest ways. You know, you find yourself, like when you go to India. India is an amazing country. It is an assault on all five senses. Visually it's just overwhelming. You see stuff that you can never ever imagine. You walk. I had a chance to walk through the slums of Mumbai. You just can't. If you don't have a data point for that, you can't describe it to other people when you come back home. You can't translate the impact of that. So you get this visual intensity, the sound. In India, the only way you drive is you have to use your horn. You have to honk at and I'm not sure what it means. I've never figured out what it means, but you honk. And then you can taste India. You can taste obviously the food and so forth, but you just taste it in the air in most of the cities, and you can feel it. You can feel it just as you walk through, and then clearly the smell. You will smell some of the most fragrant smells you've ever smelled in your life, and moments later, you'll catch something that just wants to bring you to your knees. And so it's just this intensity of just diversity and just pure life, right? But you see things there that are amazing. Professionally, I have to, negotiate, and you have to learn about the culture in order to be to do that, and that means you have to form a relationship. My business is all about relationships, and in the end, travel is the best teacher of how to form relationships. And if you do some of the travel that I heard over here, you choose to just maybe head to the end of the train line and figure out how to get home. You have to have the confidence to have a relationship, to strike up conversations, to do things. It's that way in business. I have to figure out how to get to some kind of common connection. Yes, we have our business connection, but that's never what closes the deal. That's never what secures the success. It oftentimes is built around finding out about their family. What do they like to do? What are their hobbies? Food is always a great, food and alcohol are two really good things that no matter where you are in the world, I've found them to be very common denominators. Sometimes the alcohol is very different than you can ever imagine, because each country, each culture kind of has its own thing, and their own traditions of how they use alcohol and food intermixed into just daily life and into holidays and into everything else, into business customs. So you have to spend time. You have to think. People ask me, "Oh, you must know how to speak a lot of." I'm embarrassed to say I know very few words in any other language. Now, luckily, aerospace is pretty much dominated by English. It's just the translated language that is spoken to. But one of the things I find is that, again, it's back to the human. It's back to the common things that create the language that allow you to talk, even if you don't know the words. So it allows you to do business. It allows you to go complete that adventure and so forth. And I think the other cool thing for me personally has been, what I find fascinating is it's just such a great learning. But then you get to translate your learnings and experiences to other people, and you can have an impact. And you can change things. You can come back and act in your community. You can do things in your business. And so my favorite thing was introducing my wife to travel. She hadn't really traveled before, and I had this great opportunity I go to the air show every year, and the air show rotates between Farnborough in England with Le Bourget in Paris. And so I convinced her that we should take the kids and go to England, and then go to Scotland, and then go to throughout England and so forth. But this was right after a year, 9 months after 9/11. All right, and so massive fear was part of the conversation. And it's interesting to me, the fear aspect, and you see this in different governments around the world when you go. I just got back from Turkey, and you see people starting to be managed by fear And we see that in small and active ways. So as you travel around, you get to experience different, or whatever you want to call it, dynamics, or just again, behaviors or situations that truly do have really significant impacts on how the world operates. And in turn, as Chris said, I mean, the world has really shrunk. The world is shrinking at a rate that people don't understand, I think. And so what happens in one place will quickly affect everywhere else. I had a really interesting situation. This tells you how interconnected things are. Russia decides to annex Crimea. They move into eastern Ukraine. My partner that I have in my joint venture in Russia is a gentleman by the name of Sergei Shemazov. Sergei Shemazov was Vladimir Putin's boss in the KGB when they were in Eastern Germany. Obviously, a long relationship. The supplier that we procure 40% of our titanium from is this company in Russia called VSMPO. So, as the U.S. was trying to decide how to deal with economic sanctions, the reality was that we had to go back and have a conversation with the State Department that said, look, if you put sanctions on Russia, and these are very valid issues here, you will shut down the Boeing company and in turn probably impact close to 500,000 jobs within 6 weeks in the United States. And I remember the State Department said, how could you do this to? I mean, no, this is how the world is working now. Travel has opened up so many different aspects. I mean, again, travel for business, travel for pleasure, travel for need are all aspects of it. But Boeing is just one example. Because that travel is taking place, the world has gotten smaller, not just because of the way our airplanes allow people to go around the world, but because of the business of actually producing those airplanes has pulled the world much tighter and forced it in. So it is becoming so interconnected, and in order for the world to be successful, more travel has to take place. People have to go understand. They cannot act in an isolated operation anymore. They just can't. I mean, none of us will be able to survive and have the types of lives we expect or enjoy today if that takes place. And so it's a fascinating thing. I think, and why travel? Because you can, absolutely. I think why travel also is just it's absolutely necessary to make the world a better place. The world will not function, it will not grow, it will not improve. People around the world will not have better lives unless people travel. So it's a great topic. I'll have to put a shameless plug in for my wife's books, especially if you enjoy France. She's written a wonderful book called Wings on France and Paris in particular. But she also has a couple other books that are anthologies of different writers from around the world writing about travel in a really interesting way. So anyways, it's in my blood in ways that when I took my first trip, when I was standing on that street in Auckland years ago trying to figure out whether to go to the private bar or the public bar, that I had no appreciation for where it would actually take me 30 years later. So fascinating stuff.